Hey, true believers. This is James, along with Reggie from Reggie's Take.
Hey.
Today we're gonna just kind of go over a classic issue of Iron Man. This is Iron Man issue 182 from 1984. One of the darkest issues, I think. It's a little over the top too. Before we do that, we've got some breaking news.
Oh, we do?
On this pre-recorded podcast. I just found out that South Park is getting sued by Yelp for a recent episode where they made fun of Yelp. So apparently Yelp doesn't like to be reviewed.
Gee, you think South Park might do another episode because they're being sued?
I hope so. Actually, let's see. They had a pretty good response. Let me pull it up real quick. Basically, I mean, the idea of this is ridiculous. I mean, the Supreme Court already proved that, parodies are protected by free speech. You can parody something. I mean, this also should fall under fair use. I mean, I don't know what they're trying to...
Unless it's a defamation of character type of thing that they're suing for.
That's what they're trying, but I just don't buy it.
I mean, if that's the case, look at all the actors that should have been suing them by now. The government, the companies. I mean,
it's always technically a parody.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read. This is from NBC.com. This is a statement that Matt Stone and Trey Parker issued in response to Yelp. We've taken a hard look at the information presented to us, and after reviewing it, we have given Yelp and their lawsuit only 1 star. Their lawyers delivered us legal documents in a very unprofessional manner, not bothering to smile or even a quick handshake. The writing on the envelope was barely legible and in 2 different colors. It's our personal opinion that Yelp could do a much better job by not suing us for $10 million.
Is that how much they're suing them for? Wow.
They're not going to win.
So what makes this particular issue of Iron Man so dark?
Well, this one started... This is issue 182. There's a lot of history behind that. This is not Demon in the Bottle. This is not. Demon in the Bottle was issue... Let me see. I'm going to find it. I wrote them all down. Demon in the Bottle was a 1-issue story in 1979 where Tony Stark, in a previous issue, had his suit malfunctioned. It malfunctioned because Justin Hammer was controlling it by remote control, but it malfunctioned and killed like a senator or something crazy like that. So then Tony Stark did what any normal person would do and become a raging alcoholic. So...
Doesn't everybody?
Yeah, exactly. So basically, this was in issue 128 from 1979. That was Demon in the Bottle. That's kind of considered. It's kind of considered the beginning of this 2 to 3 year ongoing story arc of his alcoholism. Any kid who would. Like when I was a kid, they had, how you get paperback stories of a bunch of different comics into one, like one story arc. They just called it Demon in the Bottle. And it starts with this, and then it takes various other stories, and it pretty much leads up to the issue that we're going to do today. But before that, leading up to it, in issue 170... Iron Man retires, and as Iron Man, Tony Stark retires and gives his armor to James Rhodes, Rhodey, who, this is before he was War Machine, so Rhodey started out as second Iron Man before War Machine.
Okay.
And he does that for about a year or two, and while Tony Stark is more behind the scenes, like as the leader or whatever. And then in 1973, and then in issue 173, right after Rhodes takes over Iron Man, Obadiah Stane takes over Stark Industries. and pretty much leaves Tony Stark penniless. This was an ongoing story. Obadiah Stane was much more of a supervillain in the comics than he was in the movies. In the movies, with Jeff Bridges, they made him more realistic. But that pretty much leads to this. Go on.
So were you surprised what they did with him then in the first Iron Man movie?
No, because I really didn't know that much about Iron Man when that came out. Like, I had these stories, but I couldn't remember who Obadiah Stane was. Like, I really wasn't. I actually think they did a fine job with him. Like, I mean, Obadiah Stane is still an evil businessman, but in the comics, he was just more super villainy.
Okay.
But let's see. And really, like, the Iron Man movies really, I think it's safe to say that they really changed a lot. And I want to point out that I've said in the past that, Iron Man comics weren't that good, and, the movies is what really brought it together. That's kind of true. I think I was being a little harsh. There's definitely some good Iron Man stories, but they just they had some issues. I think the obvious issue is he didn't have like quite the villains that some other characters have. Like, really, Justin Hammer and Obadiah Stane are probably the best. And Obadiah Stane dies at the end of this story arc. Before that, it's the Mandarin, and the Mandarin is such a weird villain. Like, they pretty much kind of stayed away from him all throughout the 70s and 80s. Like, they've never really developed him very well. Even when I was a kid in the 90s, I could never understand why they gave Iron Man a secret identity. Like, it does not work at all. And that is, I think, the biggest problem that character has, because I got to keep jumping around that, and it really stifles him and keeps him from developing as a character, because he keeps having, like, that's such a barrier. And Stan Lee knew this. Secret identities, you can't just give them to every superhero. Like, it doesn't work with all of them. That's why the Fantastic Four didn't have secret identities. The funny part is, though, right after that, Iron Man has a secret identity. Hulk did for a while. That kind of makes sense. Hulk was actually the first one to come out in the 70s out of his secret identity, become public. And here's the craziest one. Thor had a secret identity as Dr. Donald Blake.
Right, which you said they made a quick reference.
They do in the movie. Yeah.
I didn't pick up on that until you said something, and then the next time I watched the Thor movie, it's that part where what's his face goes to get him away from Coulson.
It's on the fake ID.
Yeah, on the fake ID. Yeah, and it's like, oh, okay, there you go.
It's the weirdest thing. I don't know. Like, they kind of get away from it. It'll come back every now and then, but for the most part, they've gotten away from that, like, pretty early on.
So basically, in the movie, they kind of made a nod to it, but then they just left it.
It just doesn't work, and it doesn't really make sense. Like, I kind of get what they were going for, but it's like, okay, so Donald Blake, he's either a person who shares a body with Thor, or he's, and then in certain stories, they're like, no, Donald Blake never existed. It was just something that Odin created to teach Thor a lesson. And it's like, okay, that's kind of cool, but why is he still around? Like, I think Thor learned his lesson.
Right.
So it just never made sense. But Iron Man's another one, which to me never made sense. Even in the movie, if you remember, which I'm so glad that they at the very end when he's like, I am Iron Man, like, that made me so happy that they didn't bother with it. But in the movie, right before he says that, he's reading the card that Coulson has given him, like, reading the brief on what he's supposed to say, and he's like, bodyguard, that sounds kind of flimsy, doesn't it? And it's like, yes, because that was always the thing, is Tony Stark is like, oh, Iron Man's my bodyguard, and it's like, oh, come on! Shouldn't your bodyguard be around you?
Yeah, like, constantly.
You're never in the same room with your bodyguard. That makes no sense. So anyway, basically at this point, after he's given his suit to Rhodey, so he no longer has a suit. His company's been taken over by Stain, so he doesn't have a company. So he does what everyone does in that situation, becomes a drunk hobo. So I just love this cover. It's got him in a fetal position in this snowy alley, and it reads, "In the morning, Tony Stark will be sober or dead." Okay, so like the police are talking to Tony Stark, but they just think he's some hobo. And they're like, "Hey, there's a big storm coming, Tony," or not Tony, whoever you are, hobo. And he's like, "Whatever." And then the next scene, he's like, "I gotta find Gretel," which I think Gretel is like his homeless drunk prostitute friend from like a previous issue. And then so he goes and sells his coat. First thing, he sells his coat for $10, even though the cops just said it's going to be 10 below. He sells his coat at the pawn shop for $10, and guy's like, "You should use this money to get a hotel." By the way, if $10 could get you a hotel in the 80s, like, that's phenomenal. Because nowadays, like, even a cheap hotel would be $90.
Yeah,
I don't think that they're being very accurate on that. But so he walks by the hotel and he's like, "Nope, I need to go to the liquor store." So he goes in, and this is like one of the funniest scenes to me. This guy, the liquor store owner, sees drunk Tony come in, and he's like, Tony's like, "I got $10. Give me your best thing that $10 can buy." And he's like, well, a real sport, a big timer. Let's see what I got here." And he's like, how about this? 104 proof, and with tax, it comes to 10 on the nose. Like, yeah, right. And then he's like, "You gonna party tonight, huh? What you gonna celebrate?" And I'm sorry, like, I've been to liquor stores before. Whenever the drunk homeless guy comes in with $10, like the liquor store owner doesn't act like freaking Satan, like tempting him. He's just like, "Oh, here you go. Here's your booze. Now get out." Like,
yeah.
Like, this is so funny to me. Like these, but whatever. So then he's like looking for Greta, but while he's looking for him, he's like, "No, I'm just gonna drink my booze." So he's drinking his booze, and it's snowing, and he's gonna die. And then Greta comes, and oh my gosh, she's pregnant. So he's stuck with a pregnant prostitute, and he's like, "Let's go to the hospital." And she says, "No, St. Vincent, it's in the closet, and that's 10 blocks, and we'd never make it in the storm." So he finds an abandoned car in the street or something, and they go in there, and he helps deliver her baby. And then she dies while she's delivering the baby. So it's pretty intense. And then, he's flashing back about how he was... before all this, he was a billionaire, inventor, genius, playboy, and Iron Man. And he's like, "What happened to me?" There isn't a whole lot of dialogue in this one, so it's actually going by a lot faster than I thought it would. But so she dies. Cops find him. Cops take the baby in. So they're talking. So now the baby's in the hospital. It's a miracle, but I think the kid's going to make it, says the doctor. Here comes the nurse. "What about the others?" One of them's in sorry shape. It's exposure, cirrhosis, heart damage, frostbite. He's got maybe a 50-50 chance. And her, the mother, just another stiff. So then we flash back, and here's where things get real confusing. All of a sudden you see a spaceship appear out of nowhere. And it's got Thor, Captain America, Hawkeye, Wasp, and Iron Man. And they come out. And Iron Man is James Rhodes in this issue. And they come out, and what's happening is, have you ever heard of the famous series in the 80s called the Secret Wars?
I believe so.
Okay. What it is the Beyonder takes like some of the best superheroes and supervillains. He kidnaps him, puts him on a planet, and makes him battle it out. So they're coming back from that planet. They're coming back from the Secret Wars right now. So that's Rhodey coming back with the other Avengers. And then he's flying around, having a good time, and then finds out that Tony Stark's in the hospital. So he comes in and banging on the door. So Iron Man, as Rhodey, comes in and sees Tony Stark and sees him in the hospital. Rhodey. It is James Rhodes under that metal. Hey, yeah, Tony, it's me. How you doing? Believe it or not, pretty good. Better than I've done in a long time. Probably better than I've ever done. Something happened to me that night in the cold and despair and terror of those endless hours. I looked down at the baby, helpless and scared, ignorant as it's impossible to be, and realized that life is the most precious thing there is. Any kind of life, the baby's or mine. If it was important to save the infant, then it was equally important to save me. So, like, they're talking, and Rhodey's like, you want to be Iron Man again? He's like, no, not yet. So we're going to have more of Rhodey. But at the very end, Tony Stark gets well enough to be released from the hospital, and it ends with a proverb from the Buddha that says, work out your salvation with diligence. The end. So there you go. It's a weird issue. I kind of just read the whole thing, but there you go. So yeah, that's a little glimpse into how weird they get with Tony Stark with Iron Man. Definitely an interesting, but yeah, that's War Machine. Rhodey didn't become War Machine, I think, until the 90s. I think he was always backup Iron Man before then. He started in the 70s, and then in the 90s they finally gave him his own costume. But he's an interesting character.
So what made them make him War Machine?
I don't remember, to be honest. I think it was like, I think they just needed more toys, but like in the actual story, I'm not really sure. I don't really remember. But I do remember it being kind of a big deal when I was a kid. That, there's this new Iron Man. Well, he's already been Iron Man. But so we're going to read some mail. Printed circuits. Here's one. Dear Marvel, I haven't been too thrilled with Iron Man lately, so I didn't expect to like issue 178, especially because it was the dreaded Assistant Editors Month. Surprise! I actually liked the issue. I liked it a lot. In fact, it was pretty darn good. One of the best issues of the mag in quite a while. The lead story with the Kid Avengers could have been silly and stupid, but instead writer Bob Harris actually managed to pull it off. It may have seemed something of a ridiculous concept, but it was well handled, making for a very entertaining story. Not quite as enjoyable, but still good, was the second story featuring Tony Stark. I noticed that Iron Man himself wasn't in this issue. I guess that makes up for Tony Stark's not appearing in the last issue and in this year's annual. Yeah, so he wasn't even appearing in them. Like, they were making it Rhodey.
Really?
Like, they weren't even putting Tony in there. They said that the first step to solving a problem is to admit you have a problem. And in this issue, Tony Stark finally came around to realizing that the old cliche applies to him. This second alcoholism storyline has been running for a long time now, so it's about time Tony's realized what his problem is. I can't wait until Tony recovers and gets back into his armor where he belongs. The only question is, what will happen to Rhodey? And that's from Barry Dutter in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. Whoa, Barry, whoever said that Tony was getting back into his armor, eh?
Dear Mike, I've been reading Iron Man for all of my 16 years, and by far the story Struggle, which appeared in number 178, was the best story that I've ever read. For years, Tony Stark worked for good. He risked his life for the side of justice. Now twice, Tony has had major problems with alcoholism. The first time, the world's need for his help was greater than his need for alcohol. The second time, he wasn't so lucky. But Tony is a good man, and now that he has realized his problem, he will recover. Hopefully, he will become an even better man than before because of his trials. Tony should be allowed to return as Iron Man because alcoholism is not a crime against other people as much as it is a crime against oneself. It is self-destructing. Everything good man can do something wrong, it does not make him wrong or evil. It merely proves that all men and women can succumb to human frailties. Again, I say Tony is a good man, and these days good men are needed, whether they are real or imaginary. Joseph Carlotta?
Yeah.
No address was given.
Whoa, smart Joseph. Because I won't be writing you later.
We couldn't agree more, Joseph. As Tony begins the long climb back, we present our next letter, which we think says it all.
Alrighty, here's another one. Dear Denny, your realistic depiction of alcoholism is as the nearly uncontrollable disease that it is to be commended. Having known the pain of this dread disease myself, even in an indirect fashion, I can attest to the realism of your recent Iron Man stories. Tony Stark's near inability to put away the bottle for one evening in order to win $50 was no exaggeration or dramatization. My father couldn't even put down the bottle after the doctors told him that it would be his murder weapon if he continued drinking. Unfortunately, my father lost his battle with the bottle, and Tony Stark may lose his as well. Although this would certainly be a tragic ending for Tony, it would be no less tragic than the real-life deaths caused by alcoholism every day. But Denny, whatever you decide to do, whether Tony drops a bottle or dropped by it, please resolve the storyline quickly. As enjoyable as the alcoholism stories have been, Tony Stark has been battling alcohol's disease for a long time now, and the time has come for the conflict to end. Sadly, for too many people, the pain caused by alcoholism will never end, and I should know. That's from David Quinter in Annandale on the Hudson, New York.
I don't know. Do you really want to read that? Because that's the next
special
part.
Announcements? Nah.
It's long as
I'll look at them. Let's see. The special announcements item today is October 31st, 1983. Ooh, this was 2 days after I was born. At the writing of this item, and it has been the full year to the day that the Conan artist Bob Camp taped a Halloween cookie to the door of the walled Carlin office. For the past 365 days, ye editorial team has fielded questions from various passerbys like, why is there a cookie with a skull face to your door? What will you guys think of next? Was this cookie green when you taped it up? And when is Mike Carlin going to eat this cookie? Most of the questions were pretty harmless and easily dodged, save for the last one. Pretty soon the challenge was posted above the cookie. Carlin eats cookie, October 31st, 1983. What could Mike do? He hadn't anything for laugh reputation, and that was about to be tested to the limits. Then the countdown appeared under the cookie. 8 more days till Cookie Day. 4 more. 1 more. And finally, it's Cookie Day. This is back before Facebook and Twitter, where you could just post your stupid office bowl online, but so you had to actually put it in the magazine, which is kind of funny. It was obvious that he didn't want to eat the cookie. He said that his mother wouldn't let him, but those close to him knew that it was his own fear of green cakes. What? At 4:37 p.m. Eastern Time, Halloween 1983, the ritual began. Several hooded figures created Mike at the Halloween party and escorted him forcibly to an empty chair near a window in the office. They held him ringing and screaming, and it was embarrassing to see this pillar of pridelessness, suddenly so concerned about his own health, with nary a thought for the multitude outside his door who had come to see the ingestion of the skull-faced cookie. Then the crowd parted and allowed the passage of a mysterious man wrapped in cellophane. He seemed to be naked, but for the what is this? But he's in cellophane. He seemed to be naked, but for the clear plastic clinging to his skin, who ceremoniously removed the cookie from its place of honor and began to inch closer to the terror-stricken assistant editor. Here is where things get a little hazy. The cellophane man apparently tripped over something in his path, although subsequent investigation found nothing obstructing his way, and instead dropping the ancient morsel into the screaming maw of Mike's puss. The cookie followed a path to bustling 27th Street via the open window behind Mike's chair. A hush fell over the throng as Mike made his move. He daringly ran from the room and made the way to the men's room, third stall, and it is here that Mike types his memoir of the dreaded skull-faced cookie. Please pardon the flimsy paper. Wow. Next issue, the return of two villains with the same name is in the stars for Iron Man. Also, Tony Stark begins his trip on the road to recovery. That's Iron Man 183 on sale in the 30 big ones. I'm going to say this. I don't know if reading an issue about Iron Man going sober sounds that exciting to me. Oh, now I'm going to go to AA. I'll go there with Batman. Batman doesn't
Hi,
drink.
my name's Batman.
Batman doesn't drink. Iron Man is no Batman. I think that is one thing. To Iron Man's credit is, while he is similar to Batman, he is a much more flawed character. And that is one thing that that's always, it's both a benefit and a curse, I think. It leads to good stories. It leads to
interesting stories.
Yes, but sometimes he's almost full-on villain. I feel like he was with Civil War. I wasn't a big fan of Civil War. I think that they had a good idea with it, but I don't think it really turned out as well as some people really liked it, though. I know it's really popular, but yeah. So I'm kind of worried about the movie.
Well, knowing how Marvel hasn't really stuck to the comics that tightly,
exactly.
I don't know.
They've been pretty loose since Iron Man 1.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure they're basing it. I mean, obviously the concept of it, but whether or not they stick to it completely is a whole nother.
Yeah, they definitely they're totally fine with viewing these movies as they're not remaking the comics. I think
they're using the comics as their basis as their jumping off point.
Yeah,
as far as that goes, that's about as far as it really.
Yeah, with Thor, there's no Don Blake, and actually, I think the Thor movies probably follow the comics the closest. But even still, there's no Don Blake. They make it pretty clear that Asgard is a planet, whereas in the comics, they were never clear on what Asgard is.
Yeah. So, what do you think of the news that supposedly Mark Ruffalo will be making appearance
that's perfect.
In the Thor movie, third Thor movie as the Hulk.
I'm not really that surprised. I actually thought that Hulk would appear in Thor Ragnarok. I actually thought he would, because he's not going to be in Civil War, and I always felt like Thor and Hulk work really well together as characters. I really just wanted to see Hulk run around in Asgard, maybe give him a giant sword or something. Doesn't that sound cool? But especially the way the Avengers Age of Ultron ended, we don't really know what happens to the Hulk.
He's kind of almost lost in a certain sense. He doesn't know quite where to go or what to do without, because he doesn't want to hurt any more people or destroy any more things. At least that's the sense they've given this Hulk.
Yeah.
that's what I've taken away from it.
And, you know, he's not going to get another movie. So, I mean, putting him with Thor is a really good idea. I mean, you know, Iron Man's not going to get another movie either, at least anytime soon. So,
At least not a solo movie, not with Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible in Phase 4 they might recast or put Brody in the Iron Man suit, but who knows? I mean, who knows?
I think with Phase 4, they're just.
Who knows
think
what
it would
they're
be
thinking.
best if they just focus on newer characters if they make it that far. But yeah, who knows? But yeah, I think I've always thought that Thor and Hulk just work well together. Like I think, you know, it's the god and this monster. Hulk really works well with just about anyone though. Like he does with Iron Man as well. He does with, you know, Thing from the Fantastic Four. Like he really does. Like Hulk is always been, I think, a great supporting, and same with Iron Man. Hulk and Iron Man have always been great supporting characters or great guest characters.
Mm-hmm.
Their stories have always been kind of harder. I think it's always been harder for them to, like, they'll have good stories here and there, but it's always been, it's not like Spider-Man where you could have a decade of amazing stories.
Right.
You know.
Well, I think I one of the podcasts I like to listen to, they were talking about Spider-Man and whether or not they wanted to see him being pulled into the MCU or not, but they were talking that probably the two biggest characters that have the richest, deepest villains in there for the superheroes to really pull from is Spider-Man and Batman.
Yeah.
Because they both have such interesting, deep, so many different villains you can pull from, and it's not just limited to 2 or 3.
Oh, I would totally agree with that. Spider-Man's got everyone knows Batman's got a great rogues gallery. Spider-Man really does too. I mean, you know, and the thing about Spider-Man villains are, there's always been kind of, for most of the villains, he always has like a mutual respect with them. Like they hate each other, but they also have like this weird respect. Like, and that goes with Dr. Octopus, Green Goblin, Vulture, Kraven, Sandman, Rhino even. Like that goes with all those classic ones. Yeah, Spider-Man's got great villains. Yeah,
because their comparison was you take someone like Superman, you got Zod and Brainiac, and that's really as far as for comparisons. I mean, you know, you just don't have a lot of villains.
That's about it. Yeah, well, of course, in Lex Luthor, but yeah, like Superman. Yeah, like he's got some other villains, but you got to really think about it. And of course, he's got Darkseid, but Darkseid is like almost more like. He's more like an entire DC villain. Like, he's a villain against everyone in DC. Yeah, no, I do agree with that. Yeah, because Superman's other villains, like Parasite and Toyman, aren't really that great. Toyman can be kind of cool, but he's more of he should have been a Batman villain anyway. But yeah, Superman's definitely... It's always been Lex Luthor and Brainiac and then Zod. Darkseid is interesting. Darkseid, are you familiar with him?
I've never really heard Darkseid, so...
He was actually created by Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby left Marvel and made DC. And Darkseid was... he was the villain of this storyline called New Gods, and it was basically just Jack Kirby drawing crazy stuff, and it was called New Gods, and it takes place after Ragnarok, which you know is like the end of the world in Norse mythology. You think about it, though, it's also Thor comics is from Norse mythology, and Jack Kirby created those. So then you start looking at those old New Gods, and it shows Ragnarok, and it shows the world before, and it is straight up his Asgard from Marvel. Like, he basically destroys that world, his Marvel world, and then creates this new world that he's with at DC.
Huh.
Like, it's really worth looking at. It's really, really cool. But Darkseid ends up after Jack Kirby left. They pretty much just made Darkseid central villain to the Justice League and Superman and all those others. And
you're kind of right. Hulk ain't gonna get another movie, and the first two Thor movies have done okay, but they haven't been busting at the box office either. So they're kind of thinking
they need that
pulling
push.
Hulk in will help maybe.
Yeah,
they
need that push. They are. I know, like as a whole, they probably are like the weakest franchise. I really like the first Thor. I like the second one too, but like, they probably are the weakest franchise in the Marvel series right now. I guess Hulk is actually the weakest franchise, but that one only made one movie. I don't know if you can count that as a franchise.
I don't know if you can count Hulk as a franchise. Yeah. I mean, if it had 2 or 3 movies already, maybe, but...
Yeah. One thing, though, I know I've said this before, what I really like about the first Thor movie is that that was kind of the first comic book movie in years, maybe decades, where it pretty much took the source material and said, yes, we're going to make this as weird as the source material allows us.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you think about it, you had Christopher Nolan's Dark Batman movies, which took place in a very realistic which was cool. Like, he made it realistic to a T. But then you also have like X-Men where they're all wearing the leather instead of the crazy costumes. And you've got, even the first Iron Man was more on the realistic side. But this was kind of the first one that said, no, we're going to, and then of course Superman Returns, which is a weird movie. We don't see any of his space traveling. That was the setup to the movie. That's an interesting one. Having him set up, doing the most interesting stuff off camera, and then coming home.
Uh-huh.
Like, that's always kind of weird.
I think it was their Warner Brothers way of trying to, because I think they pretty much said that Superman Returns was supposed to be taking place after the events of Superman 2, and pretty much ignoring 3 and 4.
Well, do you have any other topics?
I think we exhausted them when you guested on my
podcast. We did a very long podcast on Reggie's that's going to come out before mine, and this one we kind of went through. It's really funny. I was like, yeah, I've got a comic. It's a really good one. And I went through it in like 5 minutes. I was like, that was pretty quick. But so what we'll do is we'll have Reggie's show. We talk about the new Star Wars trailer.
We talk about a lot of things.
A bunch of new movies that are coming out.
Hollywood's inept ability to create new ideas.
Right. Man, like remaking Roadhouse, I think is just like the most ridiculous thing ever. Ronda Rousey, by the way, like, what do you think? Like, I know she's wanting to play Captain Marvel. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean,
I think you have to be a good actor too. I know she was in Expendables 3, and I'm sure she's fine in like an action movie like that. But the super, like, these Marvel movies, they actually try to be good movies.
Okay, if Marvel decides to want to even consider her, hopefully they go through a little bit of an extensive testing process with her to see if she's going to be good enough to do the role. Because I'd rather see someone either unknown or someone just coming in and play that role than to have her play it and have her suck at it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, she may have the physique, going in where it'd be believable for her as being a superhero, but
I think
I don't know.
I think if she wants to be in it and if they want her in it, I think they're gonna have to go the Dave Bautista route and give her. Well, Dave Bautista was actually pretty good, but give her a kind of a side character.
Yeah,
Like either a henchman or a sidekick, and just kind of use her more for her fighting abilities. I
I don't know.
I didn't see Expendables 3. I'm sure that's not like the best example
I don't know. I think
of acting caliber, but
she's wanting to try and break into acting, and that's fine. I think Roadhouse might be a better first choice.
I think you're right. Yeah,
That might be fit her style more, or whatever. I think throwing her into
you're
a
gonna
Marvel,
have to start small.
I think throwing into a Marvel movie would just be asking way too much.
Now, while while I don't really care about the idea of remaking Roadhouse because it's totally unnecessary. Like, if you are going to remake it, I could totally see her doing it.
Well, I don't know any male actors that I would want to see in that role.
No.
And I think you think about it, going a female route.
Yeah, it would be a different movie. Very different.
You wouldn't be getting any comparisons to Patrick Swayze.
Exactly. So I think that would actually be kind of different.
It might be a better choice.
Yeah.
To go with her for that instead of a male actor.
Yeah. Speaking of female cast, Ghostbusters. Now, is this supposed to be like sort of a sequel, or is it just an all-around remake?
I don't know, because the director says it's not necessarily a sequel, but it's not necessarily a remake, and I don't know how to take that.
I hope that they make it.
That's almost like a two-stepping around the answer.
Yeah, it's
a
question out. Yeah. I hope what it is even if they don't, like, even if it doesn't really have anything to do with the first one, don't make it a full-on remake. Just make it take place 30 freaking years later.
I would really see it like you just said.
Yeah.
Something of these girls decided, hey, we can do this. It was done once before. Why can't we try
that would be fine.
And then that would be cool. But to sit there and try and restart it from the first, I think would be a mistake.
It would be unnecessary.
Yeah.
Totally
I was going to ask you. It came out during the New York, either during the New York Comic Con or before the New York Comic Con, which was just a couple weeks ago, that Warner Brothers and DC have given their blessings to the director who's going to do the animated movie The Killing Joke.
Yeah, that's right.
They can take that to a rated R if they want to.
Huh.
Now, the director says that just because they've been given permission to go that far doesn't mean that they necessarily will take it that far. I've never really read that comic. I have an idea of what happens, and I've read some things that it's a pretty brutal comic.
Yeah, it is.
Because I think Joker pretty much beats the crap out of Barbara Gordon or whatever, Batgirl or something like that.
Yeah.
Should they make a rated R animated Batman type?
No, and I'm going to tell you why.
And
I know people go crazy about these DC animated movies, and they're good, I guess. I don't know. Like, I kind of feel like,
I guess a PG-13 would be okay, but maybe not necessarily go full on R.
Well, I kind of feel like DC lately, both in their animated and in their comics, have a tendency of going too far on the violence, and not like I'm not like offended by it. I just kind of roll my eyes at it. It's like, oh yes, I get it. You guys you're the comic book for adults. Now shut up. Like, I mean, that's kind of how I feel with it. Like,
I mean, because obviously that Killing Joke is going to be released straight to, I'm assuming, video, because there's no technically release date for it for theater.
I think they should definitely go for the R rating, because that scene.
I mean, if you're just going to release it straight to home release, then fine, go for the R if you want to. But if it's actually going to be tried to be put out to the theaters, then PG-13 might be the better way to go.
Well, that scene is pretty brutal, so I think they should probably go for the R. But that doesn't mean that they should go above and beyond on the brutality either, because there's a point where it's just like, oh my gosh, I get it, you guys.
Now, I could be wrong, but I thought they were trying to get Mark Hamill to do the voice of the Joker for that.
Really? He said he retired it. I don't know. I could see him.
It's either that or it's their wish list. They really would like for him to do it. I don't know.
Well, see, I read that he retired it because
I know
as he gets older, he can't do it anymore.
I know it's hard on his voice.
Yeah,
I think it always has been, but
if they get him to do it, more power to him. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean. I don't think, I'm not even sure if he can physically do it anymore. Well, I think that pretty much does it for tonight. I'll see you again. We're going to, in the next couple weeks, we're going to be doing the new James Bond movie, Spectre.
Yes.
And then we're also going to be doing Star Wars.
Yeah, I have, for my Reggie's Take, if some of you may or may not know, I'm a bit of a Star Wars freak. There's a lot I'd like to do with Star Wars, so time and will determine whether or not I get to do it all. Or not.
Right.
Life gets in the way, job, money, bills, roof, food, small things.
Right. Oh, I know. Well, we'll see you guys later. Have a good night.